Hello and welcome to the Fusion Artist Studio, wherein each week we visit with an artist or someone involved with the arts in Marion and Grant County to try to get some insight into what they're doing, what they believe the community is offering to artists, and what artists need from the community. This week we are going into a very specialized niche, and our guest is a person that I've known for a long time in a couple of different lives.
Yes.
Greg Maynard from Carey Services.
Afternoon, Ed. Good to be here.
Greg, what we're talking about today, the proper name for the program is
We call it the Creative Hearts Art Studio.
Creative Hearts
Yes.
Art
And
Studio.
that was the name the artists themselves came up with when we opened the studio. We gave them the naming rights. And so that was what the artists and the staff got together, and that's what they decided to name the place.
And the artists are people who have some sort of disability
Yes.
that they have not only learned to work with, but they thrive in the artistic world.
Yes.
And the program itself was given birth about 4 or 5 years ago. And you had 2 people here from Pennsylvania, and it grew from that. Tell us that story.
We use, 4 or 5 years ago, we determined that there were certain people we served that our current programming then did not serve well. A big piece of our philosophy is the people we serve have choice in what they want to do every day. And between what we call our traditional day services program, life skills, or working in our production facility, we had people who didn't really want to do either one. So we came across some of our staff were at some state meetings, and Patty and Susan, who we still are in touch with, have created what they call the creative abundance model. Both of them, one of them is an artist, one of them has spent her whole career in our world of disability services. So they got together years ago and realized that people with disabilities can be as creative. They have wants, they have desires, and there's things they want to do. They can express themselves. So this model is just an adaptation of creativity. One thing we do stress is that everything we do there's a difference between arts and crafts. Crafts you come up with, you buy something in a box, you put it together, you come up with a finished product. In our definition, art is something that you envision and you put it together however that works out together in your mind. So we do art. Occasionally we do some craft stuff for some people if they want to. Again, choice. So 5 years ago we put this together and we had Patty and Susan in for a 2-week residency. Started the program, revamped a area of our production facility. It's ironically the best lit building, and Patty and Susan, we'd envisioned, digress a little, we envisioned putting in another part of the campus. And Patty and Susan, their first day there, we gave them a tour of our campus and walked into this building. If you're familiar with the bypass, it's the windowed building on the bypass.
It's the window right on the bypass,
Yes.
and you'll see stuff in the window
If you look in,
as you drive
if
by.
the lights are on, you see the big
Yep.
wall. And Patty and Susan walked in the room and says, "This is a studio." And we looked at each other like, "Oh," we looked over here and said, "No, this is a studio. It's got light." And our plans changed day one. So we have well-lit area, wide open. The tables now, after 4 years, it looks like an art studio. We have a running joke that whenever people, before COVID, when we had people come in, there would be this big rush to, we have to clean the studio. And a couple of us said, no one appreciates a clean art studio. Art studios are messy. So now after 4 years, we have a ½ inch of paint on the tables. It's dried, and the tables themselves are pieces of art.
Picasso didn't clean up the
No,
place at
never.
the end of the day.
A clean desk is a sign of a sick mind. So those of us in the creative world understand that and have to defend ourselves because we can find everything on our desk. Same way in our studio, people know where it is.
Well, I got to tell you, we did the Good Morning Grant County show from that room one day,
Yeah,
and there was almost a vibration in that room with the creativity that goes on.
Yes.
There was no one else there that day except the 4 or 5 of us.
yeah.
But it didn't need anybody more than that. It just was alive.
A lot of us in the building or on campus, we have a running, and it's a little harder now with COVID, obviously, because we're not out of our offices as much. If any of us need a break, we go hang out in the art studio for 10 minutes. Walk through, say hi to the artists, see what they're working on, and then we go back to work. Okay, that's our recharge time. We just walk over and check in, see what they're up to, see what's new on the wall if we haven't been there for a few days. And it's just a good time for There's always music playing. They have a big screen TV. They're playing videos. It's a very relaxed environment, a very creative environment. So, yeah, it's
Well,
a lot
I'm
of
going to
fun.
go down a couple of roads here that maybe I shouldn't go down at all, but I'm going to anyway. Is it fair to say that people with some form of disability are more willing to express themselves, their feelings, their thought, their creativity, than are people who are more conventionally programmed?
There's certainly some folks that are like that. You know, the thing we like to say is the people we serve, yes, they have disabilities, but underneath, they're a person just like you or I. They have wants, they have needs, they have desires. So the art studio is a way to let them express themselves. You know, it's a creative outlet, so they can explore, you know, various styles of art. You
And
know.
they do.
Oh, totally. If you look at, we still have a couple of pictures on the wall from when we opened the studio. And they're kind of reminders of this is what we used to do 4 years ago. And if you look at those compared to what we're putting out, well, if you looked at our Facebook page this week, there's a Facebook post with some of the Easter-based art we're doing that's for sale. And I think we've sold it all already. I think there may be one piece left as of when I came in this morning. Back when we first started, it was a lot of masking tape, geometric shapes, very angular, very blocky, or just colors. Now it's organic shapes, a lot of dynamic art, a lot of pour art, spin art that's very abstract, very custom. You couldn't recreate it if you tried, even if you have the same colors.
Some of it borders being on folk art.
Yes, definitely.
Others is more abstract expressionism.
Yeah.
There's a whole gamut of
Yeah.
styles in there.
And that's based on what those individual artists want to do. You know, we have staff that help them. Some folks have some dexterity issues, so maybe pouring actual paint is tough for them. So we either do, the staff pours the paint, or we help them pour the paint, or they tell us where they want something done.
But you aren't teaching the rudiments of art. You're not having instruction going on, are you?
A little bit, just some foundational techniques maybe, but yeah, we're not doing an art class. It's
Right.
what do you want to do today?
We're not learning to draw in
Right.
here.
We do a little of that if the individuals want. I know back in the fall, one of the artists, there were 2 or 3 artists, and the manager actually did, who has some drawing skills, he actually did a little drawing class. You know, the old, if you're familiar, the old cartoon art school, you know, submit your, you know, draw the circles
So
and
packs of
time.
matches.
Yes, you know, draw the horse, you know, kind of
Yeah.
thing.
And you'll be rich.
Yeah, exactly.
Which leads to the next question, and that is, you have had several auctions through the years of their work. The work is for sale. It helps Carey Services.
Yes.
Does it also enhance the lives of the artists themselves? Are they getting a piece of this?
Every artist in the studio, we have a signed agreement. Anything that they sell, the artist gets 60% of the proceeds.
Okay,
The agency keeps 40% for overhead, for staff time, for supplies.
just like a good gallery would do.
Exactly. You know, and a lot of the folks we do a lot of collaborative stuff. So that one, if there are 3 artists, they just split that 60% 3 ways. You know, we don't track hours. Some studios we know actually track how many hours someone put into it and do a proportion. And we just said, okay, if you have 3 people working the art, you split it 3 ways.
Do you have people who have been in the program since the beginning?
Yes.
Talk about their growth through the years.
It's been really interesting because, you know, as I was talking earlier about some of the art that was done 4 years ago, and some of those artists are still there, and to see what they would have done 4 years ago and to see what they're doing today, it's like that's not the same person. But it's like all of us, we grow, we change, we adapt, you know, we learn new things, we experiment with new things. So yeah, it's just been seeing that. I know we have 2 artists in particular come to mind right off, and just to see their growth. One of them hates being in front of crowds. Very, very much an introvert. But if you get her in the right setting and hold up one of her paintings, she will talk your leg off about what that painting was and how she did it. And sometimes she needs a little prompting to warm her up, but you know, it's something that she's proud of, and she should be. They're darn good pieces of art.
Talk about the people who buy the work. In some cases, it's people who are making a donation to a charity. I understand that. Other people, they are purchasing a work of art.
Yes. We have
Talk
seen
about that mix.
We have seen a lot of folks there. It's hanging on living room walls or office walls. It's art because they like the piece of art. Yes, they know that it's going to the agency. The artist's getting 60%, and so on. But they walk in. Obviously, COVID impacted. We do the annual Expressions event, the fall event, the open house. 2 years ago, we brought it on campus where we could actually have people in the studio. The first couple of years, we did it at Roseburg. And we decided to bring it on campus, have people in the studio, and we did some interactive things. But seeing that year, we sold, I believe, 110 pieces of art in 2.5 hours. And it was just people coming in, seeing the tour, engaging with the artists, because a lot of the artists were there that night. They were helping with the interactive stuff, were able to stand and say, this is what I did, this is how I did it. And walking through the building that night, there were a couple of us, as we were talking about it later, as we were tearing things down, they were talking for 10 or 15 minutes. And, did you see that crowd that was gathered around that picture when, this artist was talking about her piece of work? And so, yeah, it's very much an interactive thing. Art is very much a personal thing. I know you and I have some photography backgrounds together. So, you talk Ansel Adams and we just light up and,
People walk away and
I'm ready to go to Yellowstone now, but, okay. But, yeah, to certain people, they want Picasso or painting. You and I have photography in common. So it's whatever that passion is, but you find people in the public with that passion, like that art, and the artists that do it, there's some connections there. Art is very much a unifying force in everything we do in the community. We all know that today,
How many pieces have been sold through the years?
I knew you were going to get me on a number here sooner or later. Easily.
Several hundred.
Several hundred easily, yes.
Approaching 1,000 maybe?
Probably not that much, but I know we're in triple digits easily.
That it ends up hanging in living rooms or in homes in one way or another, offices?
Some of it, we've shipped stuff across the country occasionally, depending on family members who live out of state. They call or they see something on Facebook or someone calls them and said, hey, I did this, and they'll call us and say, I hear my cousin did this, I want to buy it, can you ship it to me?
Go down another path we shouldn't go down, but we will here. In Europe, particularly in Germany and Switzerland, I believe it is, there are communal living establishments set up for people with disabilities, and their work is treated with reverence in the art world in Europe. They have agents who sell on their behalf. They're in collections all over the world. We haven't reached that point in America, have we?
No, not yet. We're getting there. I mean, as we talk with Patty and Susan and see how many people, and their model is not the only one. I mean, there are a lot of ways to do art. Theirs is a very focused concept around people with disabilities. There's a lot of ways you can do art, but we know that this model works especially for the people we work with. It's been a great success for us. We have lots of ways we can grow it. The manager and I were talking earlier in the week about some ways we can do some things different. And for us, it's priorities and time and people and just taking time to make things happen and above the daily grind of just helping people and serving people. But
talk about two audiences here for a minute. You've got the audience to your clients, who are in many ways an audience as well as contributors. Do they appreciate what's being done by the people in the art studio?
Oh, yeah. If in our campus, over the last couple of years, we've started hanging art all through campus. In our administration building, what we call Building A, there's art hanging on the walls, a few spots there. In fact, some of the early Head Start kids do art. They do some things too. If you go through our Building B, our multi-purpose room, our main gathering spot, which is the big lunchroom and everything, we have gallery systems there, so there's art hanging all through there. A lot of the offices, a lot of the meeting rooms have art hanging in them. And then you go back toward the studio side, and there's one huge wall you can see through the windows at night when we leave some lights on. There's a huge wall that probably has 50 pieces of art hanging on it, and you see stuff sitting on the windowsill and stuff like that. So as people walk through, there's comments. People who aren't in the art studio sometimes are inspired, like, maybe I want to go try that. If it's, if I have a free day, maybe I want to go back there. And part of the choice thing is people come and go. We have artists back there, but if the production facility has a big job coming in, they work on a production facility for a day or two, and then they come back to the studio. So there's a lot of freedom in what we do there too.
Talk about the audience in the larger community that will buy, again, either as the charitable donation or because they appreciate the art. Is that audience growing?
Yes.
And is it becoming more appreciative of what they have in the community?
We believe so, because one example I can point to is we actually have some artists who have gotten commissions.
Okay.
There's been some things, 2 years ago, the one big Expressions where we had the studio open. There were some pieces of art there that people loved that had already been sold. We kept them on the wall with a huge sold tag. Someone tried to take them. But after that, those artists, there were phone calls like, I know it won't be the same. Can you make me one like that? I like what you did with
huge
that thing.
praise.
Oh, yeah. There was one, and it was on, I believe we had it on our Facebook page. It was a artist rendition of a big peacock feather.
Okay.
It was about 24 inches long, about 12 by 24. Gorgeous piece of art. And several people fell in love with it. I know we probably sold 4 or 5 of them. That artist had, and they all looked different. They were all custom because she did them differently every time. But I know we're doing some of that is we're getting folks that like something, or a lot of the stuff we put on Facebook, which tends to be kind of the folky stuff you're talking about. Easter, there were a couple of rabbit things on there, and I know we've gotten some calls about that over the winter, Christmas time. We did a snowman piece of art out of old pallets. I think we sold 15 of those things. Just
Okay.
People liked them. And so, so from that standpoint, we're definitely getting interest in people outside and family members and word of mouth. And
Carey Services is one of a number of organizations in the state that are engaged in your kind of work. Mm-hmm. How many are doing what you're doing with art? Is that still fairly rare?
each agency is a little different. I know there are, at one time, I know there were at least 4 agencies using Creative Abundance, using the model we're using. I believe we were the second in Indiana to adopt it. I think there was an agency we were all talking about at the same time. They got on Patty and Susan's schedule a little before we did. And I know after us, there were a couple agencies that looked at least doing pieces of it. So I know there are several agencies that have studios. Some focus on some different things. There's one I know that does a little more pottery. We have a sewing component to ours. We've talking a lot today about painting, but we have a sewing component and huge needles, blunt needles, big yarn for some dexterity things. So people with some dexterity challenges can use big grids and still do sewing.
But in theory, this could expand to all of the visual arts.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you could do sculpture.
We've done sculpture. We've done big paper maches. 2.5-3 years ago, we actually got a Indian Arts Commission grant. The colorful, I call it Dr. Seuss Birdhouse in Hogan Park on 14th Street. Our artist did that. That was a donation
Public
our artist
art.
did to public art. We had a collaborative thing. Another group did the benches. We did the birdhouse, and it's there for the public to enjoy. And so we're doing a lot of things like that. We're looking at, we have had requests for pottery, photography. A couple people mentioned trying to do stained glass. So all those avenues are things that as we look to grow the studio, how do we incorporate that within what we're doing?